Grief is a journey with no map, no destination, and no end. Where the Reasons End is a novel that doesn't just grapple with grief, it dissects it, turning it inside out with the most unexpected lens. This is a book about a mother who, in the wake of her son's suicide, begins to have imagined conversations with him. It's a story of loss, yes, but it's also a sharp exploration of the human condition, the absurdity of life, and the complexities of love and memory. The beauty of this novel lies in its balance of sorrow and wit. Despite the heartbreak, these conversations are filled with strikingly clever moments, conversations that dive into the state of the world and what it means to be human. Every page leaves you with something to reflect on, something that makes you pause and think. If you're in need of a book that challenges you, that gives you a lot to chew on while you sit with your thoughts, Where the Reasons End is the perfect read. It's razor-sharp, insightful, and quietly powerful. Throughout this novel, the mother and her son engage in conversations that span everything from the deep, existential questions of life and death to the everyday absurdities of human nature. In this chapter, titled Consolation, we see her trying to find some sense of peace, or at least understanding, in the wake of her son's death. It's a moment where grief and memory intertwine, where the sharp edges of loss meet the soothing balm of reflection. As they talk, there's both wit and sorrow, a reminder of how humor often coexists with pain. Let's dive into this excerpt from Consolation, where we hear one of their most revealing exchanges about life, death, and what it means to continue when everything feels uncertain. "I made a cake for Christmas Eve," I said. "Was it a success?" Nikolai said. "Half of a success," I said. "I made a Japanese cotton cheesecake. It's a nice-looking cake, cheesy but not cottony." "So you failed the other half," he said. "Now you understand my frustration as a baker." "Yes, but it's okay. Sometimes the first draft of a story doesn't turn out right. Except you forget, a cake is a one-draft story. You don't get to revise, but to rewrite." I said. "I'm going to try again. Baking can't be harder than writing, don't you think?" "You still don't get it, Mommy. You can't go back to make the cake twice. Like you can't step into the same river twice. Just as none of us could go back, remeasuring the ingredients that made up days and years, repeating the steps with more care, hoping to eliminate the errors, hoping not to make new mistakes, so that this story would have turned out differently, and Nikolai would still be alive." "I thought we were discussing baking," he said. "Don't make any unnecessary leaps." "One doesn't," I thought, "have to make a leap at all. When every time one looks up from a book or turns around in the kitchen, or fills a vase with water, one bumps into that monumental absence. Monumental, how clumsy, how cumbersome, how unwieldy you make me feel. How you resort to redundancy to make a point," I said. "I know," he said. "But really, monumental is a deathly word," a friend of Nikolai's had written, reminiscing that when they stood in a circle to talk, he bounced up and down, as though he had springs in his shoes. Another friend had told me that when they had gone out for walks, he would jump into the air to pick the plums that were out of everyone's reach. A mother of his classmate had written, telling me that he would always remain in her memory as the boy who had raced his friends down the street lit up by orange lights on an autumn night. How can one make a monument, granite or marble or bronze, lithe and nimble in flight? "I would say a cotton cheesecake is a more sensible quest than a monument," Nikolai said. I told him that the word monument came from Latin monumentum, memorial, and monea, to remind. I had looked it up, along with mind and memory, and mourn. Many words had to be relearned since his death. "Do you need a monument to remember me?" "I would rather you were reminded of me by a piece of cheesecake, because you're a baker, not an architect, because cheesecake is perishable," he said. "Oh," I said, "I've never used perishable in my writing." "Better than that word you never tire of using, inevitable. They are different adjectives." "I prefer a world made of the perishable," he said, "not the inevitable. Inevitable makes time more bearable," I thought. "Time doesn't make sense if not for the perishable," he said. "Okay," I said, "we can have different opinions. As long as you promise not to use monumental again," he said. "You really need to sharpen your skills with adjectives." "I had a dream last night," I said, changing the subject. "In my dream I was going to pick up Daddy and Jay from a hotel, which was like the hotel we stayed at in London. Were you driving?" I parked the car nearby. "You can't drive in England," he said. "You don't know how to drive on the left side." "Oh, it was a dream," I said. "At the hotel entrance, all of a sudden you were walking next to me. In my dream, Nikolai was wearing his favorite blue-striped t-shirt. "Mommy, I'm hungry," he said to me. The moment I heard him, I woke up. Before reality and unreality were separated like night and day, darkness and lightness, I lived over and again with his smile and his voice in my head. "I wish I could tell you I had had the same dream," Nikolai said. "Then it would feel like it truly happened." No. I thought about several people who had told me their dreams about the departed. Often the dreams were interpreted as signs of communication from the other world. Yet dreams are but prologue to days, epilogue to other days, written by our faltering minds. "It would be a terror," I said. "People with their independent lives should not meet as independent entities in dreams, too, even when one of them is no longer alive. That changes nothing about an independent life already lived," I said. "But then it's unfair," Nikolai said. "How do you know if someone wants to be in your dream? Like, how do I know you would rather be playing hide and seek with me at night than telling me you were hungry?" I said. "Alas, I don't know." No one has a choice when others decide to capture him or her in their dreams. So fundamentally, dreaming is injustice inflicted upon whomever is being dreamed of. Sometimes self-inflicted injustice, I said. People you want nothing to do with still come into your dreams, just like baking then, he said. I thought baking was the opposite of dreaming, I said. You have a precise recipe, with everything in control, and you get the right product in the end. Did you get everything in good control when you made the cheesecake? No, but that was because I'm not an able baker, Charlie, as you are, I said. Bad pun, he said. What, ABC, he said. American-born Chinese. You should know, my friends, and I never used the term. Oh, I said. It's never occurred to me. I only thought of Able Baker Charlie from Richard Scarry. When Nikolai was little, I was fascinated by a Richard Scarry book. What do people do all day? Once, while having an official coffee with a dean at a university where I used to teach, and not being able to decipher her words, which was seemingly pregnant with meanings, I blurted out without thinking, "What do you do all day?" I've noticed that you like to ask people about what they do for a living, Nikolai said. For a living, yes, but that's a compromise, I said. What I really want to ask is, what do you do all day? How meddlesome, how intrusive, how impertinent. If days are where we live, I thought, I will always want to know how people live in their days. Why? He said. Don't you sometimes have the feeling that others have answers to questions you don't have answers to? But others may look at you and think the same, he said. What if I ask you, what do you do all day? Oh, the things you know, I said. Reading, writing, cooking, looking out of the window. What do you do all day? Oh, the things you don't know, he said. Dreaming, thinking, dreaming. What do you dream about? What do you think about? Not telling. Oh, I said. Okay, we were quiet. I thought about the dream from the night before. There were old recipes I no longer cooked because they had been his favorites. There were new dishes I had made, since it was hard enough when a child said he was suffering, and a parent could do little to help. It was beyond helplessness when a parent could do nothing to mitigate a child's hunger. Be careful, he said. Don't overinterpret anything. I'm not hungry. You only dreamed of it. Do you still suffer? I said. That's a worse question than what do you do all day, Nikolai said. Imagine greeting someone. Hello, nice to meet you. Do you suffer? You're the one who says we shouldn't ask inane questions, I said. Do you still suffer? He was quiet for a moment. Depends how you use the word, he said. I looked up the word suffer. It comes from sub, from below, and fair, to bear. So, if you ask me whether I still have to bear the weight of living, he said, no, I don't suffer anymore. What do you have to bear? I said, things that are always with me, with or without a physical body, he said. I rearranged a vase of half-withered hydrangeas on the windowsill. Sometimes when I felt agitated, I walked from room to room. Each room was full of objects, still lifes in his new home. Still life, still part of this life. For years he had asked me, if you write about suffering, if you understand suffering, why did you give me a life? I had never given him an answer good enough. Now we're both sad, he said. We're good at making each other sad. I thought I was better at making you angry, I said. True, he said. We do argue a lot, don't we? All the arguments we had, looked at from this side of death, had been about a promise a mother could barely deliver, and a wish that the child suspected would not come true. Often I had told him, Life is difficult, but things will work out in the end, as long as we have patience. Patience, patience, he had said. Do you really think everything will be better someday, when I'm older? I'm not mad at you anymore, he said. I know, I said. All those storms I had thought we had weathered them together. But perhaps there is no true togetherness when some pains remain incomprehensible. Oh, I forgot, I said. I did learn one thing when I was baking the cake. I figured out how to make the parchment paper stand in place. How? He asked. A few times when Nikolai made cakes, he and I had struggled to make the parchment paper stay upright in a perfect circle while he poured the batter in. If only I could show him, I thought. Not telling, I said. Come on, he said. There are a million things worth not telling, but not a little trick in baking. There are a million things worth living for, I thought, including a little trick in baking. You don't even believe it yourself, he said. What if we don't have to believe anything? I said. Perhaps living only requires resolutions, like New Year's resolutions. I thought their whole point is not to last. No, like finding an answer, a solution. You're bad at giving answers, but I've found mine already. Like resolving time, a year into days, a day into hours, an hour into minutes, I said. But has it occurred to you that time thus broken down makes quicksand? He said. Yes, I'm fully aware of that, I said. And you still resolve to live on quicksand. What you call quicksand, I said, is our reality. Yours and mine. Yes, our genes. Why don't we get to live like other people, on flat and solid earth before it was discovered to be round? Other people live on other kinds of quicksand, I said. Really, I don't know, but I like to imagine that is the case. I don't think so, he said. What's underneath the quicksand? What's underneath? I said. I don't know. We don't fall into an abyss for no reason, he said. What if, I thought, we keep trying? What if an abyss can be made into a natural habitat? What if we accept suffering as we do our hair or eye colors? What if, having lived through a dark and bleak time, a parent can convince a child that what we need is not a light that will lead us somewhere, but the resolution to be nowhere, even if it's ever and forever? What then? He asked. That I would make do with my imperfections ever and forever. No one is perfect, I said. That's an old line, he said. It means nothing to me. Life is imperfect, but it does mean something. No, yes, it's a consolation prize, he said. But I don't live for consolation prizes, mother dear, as we can see from this moment in Where the Reasons End. The conversations between the mother and her son are not just a way to process grief. They're a deep dive into the human experience. The rawness of their exchange, the wit, the vulnerability, it all creates a unique space where grief and humor coexist, making us reflect on our own lives, losses, and what we choose to carry forward. The language in this book can sometimes feel raw, even vile, but it's through that intensity that the author provides a transparency, giving us a window into the unfiltered thoughts of a mother grappling with her son's death. This honesty is a gift, offering us a mirror to our own emotions and the complexities of the human condition. If you enjoyed this excerpt, consider exploring more of this beautiful, heartbreaking novel. It's a profound journey of love, loss, and the strange ways we keep those we've lost close to us. Thank you for joining me in this reflection on Where the Reasons End. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe if you'd like to continue exploring powerful narratives with me. Until next time, keep reflecting and keep reading.